world around us is changing rapidly. The tectonic plates of our lifestyle are moving below our feet. The local and sporadic wars becoming regional wars, and we have the continuously for past 2 years nuclear Armageddon hanging above our heads. But one thing what I learned in the 52 years of my life and being several war, it's propaganda. And I want to share today something about propaganda. Before we dig deep into this topic, even though the wars are raging around the world, today we are far away from most of the wars. It's far away from us. We are unable to watch them in peace. Nobody can. It affects each of us differently on different levels. The war veterans know what it's like to be on both sides, and I'm one of them. I am. And I assure you that there are no winners in the war. Maybe two groups of people will always win. I witnessed firsthand all of this. And when you draw the line, all sides have lost a great deal, and we are all losers. And believe it or not, propaganda is the element which wins the wars, hearts and minds, but not any propaganda, but black propaganda. You heard me very well. It's called black propaganda. It's time to introduce myself. First, let me welcome all of you risk takers and truth seekers. Welcome to Life, the battlefield, where we explore life's biggest challenges and victories. For those who don't know me, my name is Bekes, and I hold the Guinness World Record for the longest live audio broadcast. On top of this, I spent 1,800 consecutive combat days in the war fighting for democracy and freedom, literally. And my professional career includes working in military security intelligence sector and diplomatic intelligence sector. As well, I'm the best-selling author and I have passion for podcasting. And in today's episode, we will discuss how propaganda wins wars, influence public opinion, and who is the master of black propaganda warfare. So let's dive into this topic. To start this topic, we need to talk about one crucial element, and that is disinformation. These days, a propaganda war is being fought in addition to the battle in which horrible things occur, killing adults and children, destroying entire cities and destroying lives. Most of people just are cheating online, they're supporting one side or second side or third side. In contrast to the physical war, kinetic war, it's also challenging to determine the victor of the propaganda war. That is, I want you to take a note. It's challenging to determine the victor of the propaganda war. And in propaganda war, all parties involved have trained for years to deceive, twist and fabricate facts about reality in effort to make it fit their desired narrative. Nonetheless, propaganda for war has been used since the beginning of conflicts, particularly during the World War II. Recently, I visited Imperial War Museum in London, and I was observing and taking notes about propaganda in World War I. It was more visual, it was more depicting how enemy kills their enemy and, these things. Second World War was much more sophisticated. And in today's time, in 2024, we're seeing the World War II war propaganda escalated and been brought to such a sophistication that human can't even notice what's happening to them. False letters claim to be from the day German soldiers telling their parents they have made it out alive, deserted, and were safe. That's the Second World War for the start. Journalist Sefton Delma of the Daily Express presented a compelling contrast between the Nazi operation, which relied on a free thinking, and the Nazi premise that people desire a leader and follow their lead. Don't forget, in Germany, Hitler was represented as a savior, not the party, Hitler. And this served as a demonstration of how to defeat a Nazi in the propaganda war, at least in one attempt. We can make comparison between this and current propaganda war raging between the Russia and Ukraine. As I said to you, Second World War in today's time on steroids. Propaganda war, it's raging, and Russia and Ukraine, it's a great example. So who is the master of black propaganda? His name is Denis Sefton Delma, who is also known by his nickname Tom, and he was born in Berlin to Australian parents who lived in Germany. His father, Frederick Sefton Delma, was Australian-British English literature professor at the University of Berlin. So he came from Australia to Berlin to lecturing. He also wrote textbooks that was required reading in German schools. Following the start of World War I, the Ruhleben camp near Berlin detained his father as a what? Enemy alien. So first was welcome, and there was an enemy alien. In 1917, the government of United Kingdom and Germany sent the Delmer family back to England as a part of prisoner exchange. Even involves enemy talks. Delmer had his education at St. Paul's School in London. It's called the Friedrichshafen Gymnasium in Berlin and Lincoln College in Oxford, where he graduated with a degree in modern languages. After graduation from college, Delma decided to work as a freelancer writer until the Daily Express hired him to head its new Berlin office. It's like a deja vu, sending him back where his parents has been detained. And the story goes that he was having collaboration with Hitler. He made history as the first British journalist, first to interview Adolf Hitler in April 1931, thanks to his friendship with Ernst Röhm, who he had met during the time in Germany. Hitler flew private plane, as we know. He was one of the first politicians who was on a private plane flying across Germany to connect with the people as much possible. But Delma, during the 1932, flew with him according to the history sources. He then associated with the Nazi party activist, taking copious notes on everything from the style of the future Führer oratory to the group he thought lay behind the bond he was creating with the German people. So he was having the intimate sight into the Hitler inner circle and how Hitler operates and what's the backbone of the Hitler success and who are the people who are behind the Hitler who preparing all these narratives for the citizens of the Germany. And in 1933, he was also present when Hitler conducted inspection following the Reichstag fire. Leaders believed Delma was a member of MI6, and his denial of any involvement only reinforced their belief that he was not just a member, but a significant one. During this time, Delma faced criticism for being a Nazi sympathizer, and then British government once believed he was working for the Nazi. So both sides didn't trust him. However, Delma observed up close how Hitler could induce a condition of near hypnosis in the audience in between captivating acts resembling a blank-faced traveling salesman. On top of this, Nazi propaganda said it wanted people to give up their uniqueness and join the Nazi Volk. That was at 1933. Now, only a mass demonstration can convince a person of the greatness of this community, says in Mein Kampf Hitler. He submits himself to the fascination of what he called mass suggestion. Hitler wrote everything in Mein Kampf. It was like an alphabet of his coming to the power, running the Germany to the ground. His senior propagandist, Goebbels, declared the community of the people will replace the era of the individual. That's what the Goebbels says. He's Minister of Propaganda. Meanwhile, as Delma pointed out, Hitler's supporters were also demonstrating their passion. And of course, according to Delma, the Nazis were like a spooky cabaret that gave people roles that they liked. Perhaps that was the truth. Now, during a period of intense social turmoil, the Nazi provided means for people to feel superior and safe in their purity. What they did, They provided a platform for you to show out your repressive fury, violence, and sadism in the service of nationalist ideals. The Führer, Adolf Hitler, character turned into the means of justifying your most hedonistic desires. That was the times. Following their ascent to power, the Nazi transformed Germany into the fascist show, complete with coordinated events and large-scale marches. They entertained the masses. The Nazi promoted an early version of the selfie by encouraging people to purchase cameras and take pictures of themselves participating in Nazi festivities. Believe it or not, that's what the Nazi asked people. Take the picture. Your living room became a part of the Hitler's Germany when the Nazis produced inexpensive radios, making the Germans the most radio-listening nation in Europe. Inexpensive radio and making the most radio-listening nation in Europe. Delmar realized that the only way to counteract this propaganda was to weaken the emotional connection between the Nazis and German people, as well as the appeal of their assigned roles. So Delmar recognized that the Germans are run on emotions, so he needs to break their emotions. So in September 1940, the political war executives, better known as PVE, hired Delmar as a part of psychological warfare effort to plan propaganda broadcast for Nazi Germany. So they built a radio station. The radio station's idea was to pose as a staunch supporter of Hitler and the Nazis in order to discredit him. Delmar thought the British attempts to counter German propaganda during the war were misguided, as the broadcasts targeted already persuaded non-Nazis, resulting in phenomenon known as an echo chamber of like minds. That's what's happened. So when he was able to do so, he broke taboos by insulting Nazi authorities and broadcasting as a fervent Nazi who was critical of the Nazi leadership. So Delmar, he knew it how German breed, how they work, how they think. He knew that Germans are the most radio listening nation in Europe. So he didn't portray himself as an English. It's gone as I'm the German, I'm the Nazi, and I will insult people in Germany. In that way, you give them different opinion to people who listen to radio, but not as an enemy, but as one of them. What he achieved? He achieved this by presenting disparaging material about official sadomasochistic orgies to attract listeners. And as a history guide us to Second World War, there's a date gonna stay forever with us. On June 6, 1944, at 4:50 a.m., the Germans learned that of the Allied D-Day landings via the military radio station Soldatenser Calais. So that station, Soldatenser Sender Calais, was a German station. The enemy descends with the force from the air and the sea. There are several breaches in the Atlantic Wall. The initial listener thought it sounded like any other Nazi radio station, blending news from the front lines with the speeches by Goebbels and Hitler. However, it was actually a British station that was disguising itself as a Nazi station, which meant it was aware of landing beforehand. Of course, they're in England. So they're part of making to fool the Germans in beliefs, and they're using the decoys, they use all the counterintelligence tools. So radio was one of them. To produce over 40% of German soldiers listened to Soldatensender, one of the top 3 clandestine stations in major German cities. One of 3 major radio stations. This can compare to some of the best cable networks available today. They lay on the beach in their smashed and torn dugouts, naked and without coverings, the station claimed, citing inside testimonies of the German soldiers abandoned by the Nazi high command during the war. Let me just explain to you something. The radio stations start broadcasting the moments before invasion literally started on the beaches. During the night, the parachute units being dropped behind German lines, but the invasion of the beaches, the amphibious attack on the beaches was in sunrise. So they are just even before the Allied soldiers hit the beaches and start fighting Germans, they produced the news for the German people saying the Germans has been abandoned. That can cause a lot of problems. The Nazi high command abandoned them, leaving them vulnerable to trample and scrape. That was their narrative. It was obvious that the purpose of this information was to lower German soldiers' morale. Because the fight started, you already have the news on radio, and me, who I was in the army, and let me share this story with you. During the war we were listening to our enemy radio station. We were on the front line, we were closer to their radio station than our ones, and we were listening to that music, and they will have this news and say how they fighting bravely and courageously against us and how they broke some lines, everything else. We knew it that it's not true. But inside your head, 2-3 o'clock in the morning, you start, little doubts start pushing your mind on a edges of sanity. Is it true or is it not true? Same happens to the German soldiers. That's how the black propaganda works. You don't portray yourself, I'm your enemy and I'm wishing you all the worst, and that's some other radio stations doing, But black propaganda, it's on your frequency, is a part of you. And Delma is the father of this one. However, things become exciting from this point on. Why is that? So we're talking about D-Day landing. German soldiers and civilians listening to the program were aware that Soldat 10 Sender was a British station pretending to be a German station. So the Germans knew it, that is British station. The British broadcasters wanted the Germans to know they were British. That's the goal. Their goal was not to deceive the audience, but rather to cover for German listeners. So at that point, British says, let's go tell the Germans we are not here to deceive them. We are British radio station. And that's where the story leads us to their chef. Their chef was Delma's debut performance in his counter-propaganda cabaret. Their chef. Interesting. She chose the name for this one. A renegade army officer, simply known as a Der Chef, broadcast the station full of expletive-laden tirades about Nazi party corruption, including graphic pornography, showing the Gestapo and SS indulging themselves in decadent orgies with the wives of front-line soldiers. Sex and obscenity were used strategically. Their chef took Nazi propaganda cliché and turned them against the Nazi. So he turned his show against the Nazi. He accused Nazi leaders of being covert Bolsheviks, working against the German people, and being overly weak. That's correct. According to the British intelligence source in Sweden, don't forget Sweden was at that stage in Second World War neutral country, the station is undermining the German people's confidence in the party apparatus. When Delma presented his shows to the King of England, that's correct, King of England, he claimed that the goal of the show, their chef, was to push Nazi propaganda into ridiculous. And he achieved this. This was not the same as a satire. In this early broadcast, Delma still wanted the Germans to believe this was a real soldier. So he made it that German people believe that this is the German soldier who talks to them. Instead, Delmer took Nazism, filthy, racist vocabulary, magnified and used it against them. Absolutely. Delma, for example, damaged Nazi propaganda by accusing them of being hidden Bolsheviks. So clever. Delma appears to have intended to suggest that peculiar moment of estrangement from oneself when you suddenly realize how much of your own conduct is skillful and performance-based. That is very important to remember. Delma acknowledged that the need for engaging individuals based on their own interests rather than what you might care about. This is what Ukrainian information fighters learned during their conflict with Russia quite early. So you don't fight enemy just telling them how bad they are, but to be one of them and using this information against them. Ukrainian advertisers, hackers, activists, and journalists are all attempting to reach Russian viewers. When people feel powerless, conspiracy theories are especially appealing, and government can't fight conspiracies. Delma strategies shifted as his war operations expanded. So war was moving forward. He launched his most ambitious station, the Soldaten Sender Calais, disguised as a native German military station. It combined broadcasts of Nazi leaders' speeches with the music and the latest news and gossip from the front. Correct, gossip, exposing all the lies and inequalities soldiers face. But the goal was no longer to trick their listeners into thinking this was Nazi station. No, that was a no longer idea. This time, the audience was supposed to participate in the action. So he was calling audience to take the action. Today, Delmar has important lesson to teach us, both good and bad. And you are curious what that is. Most importantly, we can still use his lessons today. We can apply them in daily life. In a war, Ukraine versus Russia, we can see this. He possesses the ability to enthrall listeners who appear uninterested. There's many people who are not interested in listening radio station, watching TV, or going social media. His grasp of the power of propaganda, which justifies the worst emotions and how it may provide people with enjoyable roles to play in a complex environment, is still relevant in the era of social media, if it's not even more. Everyone consistently showcases themselves online. Do you agree with that one? These days, participating in a joint performance doesn't require you to physically attend a meeting. No, you don't need to be physically there to be and take part of the meeting. People can become enraged and agitated online, congregating into the boisterous mob that shares the same catchphrases and emoticons and erupting into the boiling bowl of wrath and superiority. We frequently witness such occurrences, with various actions taking place in this way, on daily basis, on hourly basis. They're taking place. Although the Nazis were particularly evil, there are recurring themes in propaganda on all sides. That's what the black propaganda work. The emotional notes that propagandists play is the same everywhere. I experienced this in a war when I was as well. They instill a false sense of camaraderie in individuals who are disinterested in swift change. That's how the black propaganda work. Play with emotions. They can most effectively create entire other realities, conspiracy realms, and which you have no responsibility at all, period. Many people may be excited to play with this. May be excited, I don't know. Our world is filled with influential people, both big and small. We sometimes see the big people but forget the small one. Do we have Delma to compete? If you remember what I stated at the beginning, there are no winners in war. There are not winners in the war. I want you to take this with you. But black propaganda, it's real and exists. Thank you for watching. Feel free to subscribe, share, like, and comment.